What is up, guys? Patriots Global back here with another video, and in this one, we're going to be talking about the top 10 free agents on the market. Of course, the free agency is going to be starting next week, of course, March 18th. And in this one, I'm just going to be predicting the destinations for the top 10 free agents. If you guys did like this video, make sure you let me know in the comments below if you would like to see a part 2. Now, the first person on my list is going to be defensive tackle Chris Jones, who was formerly with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, ultimately, I have Chris Jones going back to the Kansas City Chiefs, and the main reason that I see this happening is the fact that they are expected to place the franchise tag on Chris Jones. If they were not to have placed the franchise tag on Chris Jones, I would say that he's going somewhere else, but for the sole purpose that they're placing that first round franchise tag on him, meaning that if a team would like to trade for him, they have the ability to, but one, the Kansas City Chiefs can match any offer, and two, they'll have to give up a first round pick for him. Now, I definitely would not be surprised to see something like they did with Dee Ford last season, place the franchise tag on him, and then go from there and potentially trade him, get some compensation out for him, because Chris Jones is one of the best defensive players in the league. He's being considered as the best available free agent on the market this offseason. Really, he is the Aaron Donald of the Kansas City Chiefs team. The Chiefs do not have much to spend with the available cap that they have between free agency and draft, so placing the franchise tag on him is going to take up a lot. I don't remember exactly how much it is for a defensive tackle to place the franchise tag on, but I know that it is pretty hefty. But you look at the struggles that the Chiefs have had on defense for years and years. I mean, this past year, they picked it up towards the end, but when you look at the defense, Chris Jones is without a doubt their best defensive player, and losing him makes them even more vulnerable. Now, next up is going to be Dak Prescott, the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, and ultimately, I have him going right back to the Dallas Cowboys when you are hearing about the free agent quarterbacks. Tom Brady, Teddy Bridgewater, Ryan Tannehill, Phillip Rivers. You're hearing about a lot of these guys going in separate directions. But with Dak Prescott, you're not really hearing much. You're not really hearing about him going to another team or things pending in the wrong direction between him and the Cowboys. And when you look at Jerry Jones, I guarantee you that his main factors out of everybody on the entire team would be Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, and Amari Cooper. This offseason, the main focus for the Dallas Cowboys is trying to get Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper back. But if it comes down to the wire, and they have to decide, okay, which one are we going to put our money into, because they're going to have to put in hefty deals for 2-star players, I guarantee you that it's going to come down to the quarterback. It is much harder to find a good quality quarterback in the league these days than it is to find a wide receiver. And Amari Cooper has been just outstanding for the Dallas Cowboys, which is why, if I'm, of course, the Dallas Cowboys, I'm hoping that I can still get him back, but there's so many other wide receivers. There's so many great wide receivers in this year's draft that they can replace him. There's so many good wide receivers in free agency. They can trade for them. They would be able to replace Amari Cooper. Is it going to be tough? Yeah. But I guarantee you that it would be a lot more tough for them to try to replace a quarterback, in Dak Prescott than it would be to try to find another wide receiver. Quarterback is just one of those small positions that you don't tweak. You don't mess around with it. You don't try to tweak. You don't, let it go and say, we'll replace him. It's not a running back. It's not a wide receiver. It's not a linebacker. A quarterback is what is essentially leading your entire offense. So I fully expect the Dallas Cowboys to go all in keeping Dak Prescott. Now, next up, speaking of the Dallas Cowboys, we have wide receiver Amari Cooper. And this one was tough. I had him going back to the Cowboys for a little bit. But then you look at the money situation that the Dallas Cowboys have. You look at the amount that Amari Cooper is going to look for. Then you hear all the rumors that they're not really pending in the same direction. And then ultimately, when I envision Amari Cooper, I don't see him staying with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, there's definitely a lot of teams that I could see Amari Cooper going to. I mean, the Giants could be even one, but the team that I see landing Amari Cooper is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles really pride themselves in their offense, really pride themselves in big plays with especially their wide receivers. If there's something that I've learned about the Philadelphia Eagles, it's the fact that they love their wide receivers, they love their running backs, and they love their cornerbacks. The Cowboys had some of the worst pass catchers. Or not the Cowboys, the Eagles had some of the worst pass catchers last season in all of the NFL. Carson Wentz was having an issue getting the ball going. Of course, they have that great offensive line, and that is really the reason that they got anywhere last season, was because despite having bad receivers, that offensive line gave Carson Wentz even a little bit more time than the average quarterback to try and make a play. Then you look at the fact that you have Nelson Agholor, who is not going to be returning next season. Who knows which direction he decides to go, but he's not going to be a Philadelphia Eagle next season, so they're losing one wide receiver there. You then have Alshon Jeffrey, who's very interesting story here. He's open to being traded. He hasn't really been producing that well for them, especially last season. He very, very well could be a trade candidate for them, in which they would be losing yet another receiver, and one of their top receivers at that. The Eagles front office definitely does not go stingy in free agency, okay? They're not like Bill Belichick, where they try to get some Walmart receivers when they lose a guy, or pick up some random no-name guy off the street. They like to bring in big-name proven guys, and Amari Cooper has been a name that has been heavily related back to the Eagles. In fact, the Eagles are even saying that they're making a strong push for him. They're going to be going all in on Amari Cooper, and really, he would fit their scheme very, very well. Him and Carson Wentz, especially with the help of that offensive line, I think could be just a deadly combo. Now, next up is edge rusher Jadeveon Clowney. And he, of course, formerly played for the Seattle Seahawks this past season, but now I have him going to the New York Giants. Now, the Seattle Seahawks have very openly said that they would love to have Clowney back. And of course, that makes perfect sense. He did great with them last year. They're still contenders. They would need a guy like Clowney, especially after they lost somebody like Frank Clark to the Kansas City Chiefs. Ultimately, though, when I look at Clowney, he's not the type of player that is demanding to go somewhere that's a contender. He's not going to take a pay cut in order to go somewhere like, let's say, the Patriots or the Chiefs or the Seahawks or any team that is a legitimate contender but have to take a pay cut. He knows that he is one of the best in the league. In fact, he was top 5 this past season in getting to the quarterback. With the Giants sitting at a projected $61 million in cap, they have a new head coach. They're going to try to make big moves. When you look at the Giants team, they have holes all around their team, literally at pretty much every single position. You look at defense, and that stands out even more. They don't have a big playmaker on their defensive line. They just don't. They also don't have really any linebacker depth. They released a few linebackers already this offseason, so they got even thinner. Bringing in Clowney gives you a bunch of different ways that you can maneuver through your defense. You can put him in through a linebacker position, try to have him more in coverage setting back, really throughout the middle of the field, or you can line him up on either side of the defensive line and have him rushing to get to the quarterback. There's already been interest between Jadeveon Clowney going to the New York Giants and the New York Giants trying to land Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney going to the Giants would already make him the biggest playmaker on their entire defense, but would also help them tremendously in finally making some plays within their defense. Now, next up, we have another former Dallas Cowboy in cornerback Byron Jones. This was a tough one, but I have him going to the Carolina Panthers. Now, some other teams that I potentially had him going to could be a team like the Jacksonville Jags or even the Philadelphia Eagles, because they are heavily pursuing Byron Jones also. Ultimately, though, you look at the Carolina Panthers and what is their biggest need? It's helping their secondary. More specifically, it's going to be cornerback, all right? They're already more likely than not going to be losing their top cornerback in James Bradbury. A lot of mock drafts have the Carolina Panthers selecting cornerback Yannick Ngakoue within the first round. And you just look at how open and how vulnerable their secondary is. And the big thing is that the Carolina Panthers are not going to be contenders if they can't get that fixed. It doesn't matter how good their offense is. If an opposing offense can throw the ball for a few hundred yards at least per game, the Carolina Panthers are not going to be able to keep up. Now, bringing in Byron Jones, you're not going to be getting a big playmaker. He's only had about 2 interceptions throughout his entire career, but the thing is that he does not pride himself in being a big playmaker. He prides himself in being more of a lockdown cornerback, making sure that the ball is not caught on the opposing receiver that he's playing against. It would be a great move for the Carolina Panthers to bring in a top veteran cornerback, one of the better cornerbacks here in the NFL, of course, and then drafting a top-tier talent, of course, in this year's upcoming draft in Yannick Ngakoue. Now, next is going to be former Titans running back in Derrick Henry, and I have him going right back to the Titans. Derrick Henry really was the Tennessee Titans offense. Now, Ryan Tannehill did great, but at the same time, he wasn't forced to throw the ball 50, 60 times a game. When you look at the playoffs, and you look at how far that the Tennessee Titans surprisingly got, it was because of Derrick Henry. Henry was not able to be stopped by really any opposing defense. Not by my New England Patriots, not by the Baltimore Ravens, who many believed had one of the best defenses in the league. Everyone thought that they were going straight to the Super Bowl. I mean, King Henry was a force to be reckoned with. Because of this, I don't see how the Tennessee Titans are able to just move on. I think they're going to do every single thing in their power to bring back Derrick Henry. And personally, in my own opinion, I think that Derrick Henry is more of a priority for them than Ryan Tannehill or any other free agent on the list. News already came out that the Tennessee Titans are heavily trying to sign Derrick Henry to a long-term deal, and I don't expect money to be a big thing. I expect them to put in as much money as they need to keep Derrick Henry. I expect Henry to get a very big deal, but ultimately staying with the Tennessee Titans. Now, next up is going to be Drew Brees, of course, the quarterback for the Saints, and he is going right back to the Saints. Let's be real. We haven't heard anything otherwise. I don't see him going anywhere else. There's been no talk about other teams trying to land him or him being interested in other teams or things not going great between Drew Brees and the Saints front office. Of course, something to really monitor here is the fact that many thought Drew Brees was going to retire this offseason. He did come out, though, and say that he does still want to play football, but if we're going to be real, there's only so much more time until he decides to retire. This could potentially be his last season. But the Saints are already looking to retain Taysom Hill, and I guarantee you that they're going to want a guy like Drew Brees to continue to develop a guy like Taysom Hill. Hill is also a guy who openly wants Drew Brees to come back. He wants to keep playing with him, and he wants to keep learning from him. With Drew Brees publicly saying that he isn't going to retire and he is deciding that he is going to come back, I don't see him going to another team, especially for another year or two towards the end of his career. It wouldn't make much sense, especially if the Saints are looking to continue to be contenders. Of course, Teddy Bridgewater is more likely than not going to be leaving the Saints. And of course, there hasn't been really any conversation between the two in a deal, which really to me bolts the fact that Drew Brees is going to be going back to the Saints. Now, next up for another veteran quarterback, it's going to be Patriots quarterback Tom Brady. This is going to be the most interesting one, and I think everyone's going to have different opinions on this one. But I'm still holding hope out that he's going back to the New England Patriots. I don't see how he doesn't go back to the Patriots. Of course, there have been very speculated teams around the league that have been like, we have interest in Tom Brady. There has been the Titans. There's been the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, you have the Patriots. The Raiders have been thrown into the mix. The Chargers have been thrown into the mix. But then you hear the fact that the Titans' main priority is getting back Ryan Tannehill. If they get him back, they're not going to be looking for Tom Brady. You have the Chargers, who are looking in way more directions than Tom Brady, especially drafting another quarterback. So they're a team to watch, but ultimately I don't think they're going to be looking too much into the Tom Brady sweepstakes. And then, of course, the Oakland Raiders talk has also turned sideways, and they said that their quarterback is going to be Derek Carr. What Tom Brady is really looking for is a decent deal. It's not about money to him, but he's not going to sign a deal for 10 to 15 million, okay? He's not stupid. The big thing he wants, though, is weapons. He wants a good offense, but not just that. He wants control. He wants control of play calling. He wants control in roster decisions. Tom Brady basically wants to have a head coach front office while also being a quarterback type of role. And of course, that's a lot to ask for, and not all teams are going to be looking to do that. Also throw in the fact that Tom Brady has never played for another system before. Now, he does love a challenge, and this would be the ultimate challenge for Tom Brady. But does he also want to go to a team that most likely won't be a contender? A team to really watch is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're, talking about going all in on Tom Brady. And of course, they have some great offensive weapons, especially compared to what the Patriots have. But chances are, even if Brady goes there, they're not going to be contenders. I doubt that they go to the playoffs, let alone a whole Super Bowl. And is that the way Tom Brady wants to finish his career? I mean, Tom Brady loves to win. He loves to compete. He wants to win Super Bowls. So when you look at that fact, isn't really his best option just to go back to the Patriots? I mean, Brady has always wanted to finish his career with the Patriots. I don't think any of us can truly imagine not being with the Patriots. And I know things have been looking extremely bad in a potential reunion, but I think that's what's going to make Tom Brady going back to the Patriots even that more surprising. Now, next up on the list, I have edge defender in Yannick Ngakoue. Of course, he was formerly with the Jacksonville Jags, and I see them departing, and I see Ngakoue going to the Denver Broncos. Now, I definitely see Ngakoue being someone that multiple teams are going to be interested in. He's going to get a lot of interest in free agency for sure. I actually had him going to the Giants for a little bit. I think that would be another really good fit, but because I have them taking Jadeveon Clowney, it just wouldn't make sense for them to land both of them. Now, very well could happen. There could be a situation where they sign Ngakoue rather than Clowney, but just because we've heard more interest between Clowney and the Giants, I thought that made more sense than Ngakoue going there. And you look at what the Denver Broncos have, and they've started to build their defense back up, okay? They're going to be losing Chris Harris in free agency, but they tried to really fix that hole in trading for A.J. Bouye. So they are doing everything they can to keep that secondary built, which is a great move by them. But then you look at their defensive line and you go, there's really no playmakers on there. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter how good your secondary is. I don't care if you have all pros back there. If you have a mediocre defensive line that cannot do its job, that cannot get past offensive linemen, cannot bull rush to the quarterback, put pressure on the quarterback, then your secondary is going to have to be covering these guys for 5 to 10 seconds. And at some point, they're going to lose enough leverage no matter how good they are, and the receiver's going to get open, and a play is going to be made. Sometimes people don't realize just how essential it is to have a good defensive line, how essential it is to get good pressure on the quarterback, because that's what forces them to make these big mistakes. That's what forces them to make turnovers. And I think that the Denver Broncos have the secondary to be able to get it done, to be able to start making plays, but their defensive line has to start to apply the pressure and do their job. Chances are they're going to be looking to be losing Derek Wolfe in free agency. The Patriots are a team that's been heavily related back to him. They're going to be looking to secure a visit with him. The Cardinals have been another team looking into Derek Wolfe. Now, the Denver Broncos aren't interested in bringing him back, but they really could end up getting outbid. And when you look at their defensive line, he has really been one of the best performers for them. Now, of course, you do have Von Miller that is going to be a great piece for them, but you cannot expect Von Miller to do all of the work. One player is not going to make all the difference. I think that the Denver Broncos know that in order to be a contender, they have to start especially looking towards their defense. And when you look at the defensive line is the biggest thing that is going to stand out. Ngakoue is going to be one of the best edge defenders in free agency. And really, he would be just a perfect fit there for the Denver Broncos. And I think that he really is a must-need piece for them, whether they get back Derek Wolfe or not. And lastly, I have offensive guard Brandon Scherff, formerly with the Redskins, but from what is being projected throughout the media, he is not going to be going back to the Redskins. I actually have him going to the Chicago Bears. Now, this one definitely was a tougher one because of the amount of teams that need help on their offensive line. I was thinking the New York Jets for a while. I was thinking Miami Dolphins. I think both teams could be very, very optimistic picks, for lack of better words. But the thing about both of those teams is that they are highly interested in Patriots offensive guard Joe Thuney. And then you look at the fact that the Bears' offensive line has just been horrendous, especially last season. It's a big reason that Mitchell Trubisky is not doing too well. He's not standing up straight. He does terrible under pressure. Their offense isn't going anywhere because Mitchell Trubisky, again, isn't doing his job because their offensive line is not doing their job. Of course, losing their offensive guard in Kyle Long, their Pro Bowl guard, was a huge loss for them, and I just don't think that they've been able to recover from that. And when I look at a team that needs offensive line help, especially offensive guard help the most, it's gonna be the Chicago Bears. But that's going to be it for today's video. These are my potential landing spots for the top 10 NFL free agents for the 2020 offseason. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below and like this video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. But other than that, I'll catch you guys in my next video.